Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather daily to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today, with us, Dan Blanchard, a best-selling and award-winning author, speaker, and educator, is going to be having a very interesting conversation with Heather Monahan. Heather is also an author, a podcast host, and speaker. But before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness in the planet. And you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment on this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that can benefit of the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, while we are live streaming, we're going to have an active chat screen you're going to be seeing here on my side or under the video if you're following us from our smartphone. And through there, you are more than welcome to interact with us. We also want you to collaborate with Mindalia with your own valuable content. And for that, you can go to our website. On the top, you're going to find a link. It says Collaborate with Mindalia. And that link takes you to a form that you can fill out for our technical team to be getting in contact with you. You can collaborate with Mindalia in English through Mindalia TV English, but you can also do it in Spanish through Mindalia Televisión and in Portuguese through Mindalia Televisão. Visit our different channels and platforms, our YouTube channels, Instagram accounts, Facebook pages, and when you follow us on that, you are not only helping us reach as much people in the planet as possible, but you also keep yourself updated with the amazing information that we share there on a daily basis. I am not going to be delaying this any further, and I have the great pleasure of introducing and saying welcome to Mindalia live streaming to Dan Blanchard and Heather Monahan. Guys, welcome to Mindalia. The screen is yours.
Oh, thank you, man. It's always a pleasure to be here. And how are you, Heather?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So, Heather, for all of our Mindalia fans out there that don't quite know you yet, let me just give them a little brief description of you. All of our Mindalia people, here it is. Heather, she was amazing, is an amazing all-around everything. She was a rising corporate star, hit it to the heavens, and then said, you know what? I think I'm going to write a book. Right? I think I'm going to be a speaker. I mean, a completely different track. Then she jumps in the podcast world. How scary is that, right? But she jumps in the podcast world. She takes that on. And I got to tell you, Heather, I've been listening to your podcast, and I love your podcast, and I listen to a lot of them. So that's like really saying a lot. And I know I'm just kind of scratching the surface here. And we're going to talk more about your podcast in a minute. But Heather, maybe you could fill our fans in on a little bit about like who you are and like your story about this meteoric rise you had, and then how you said, I'm going to try it again now in a different place. And here you are doing it all over again. So maybe you can share your story with our listeners, Heather.
Sure. I grew up in New England. I started in sales after I graduated college, and I became an equity partner at a young age in a group of radio stations, taking a $27 million property and turning it into a $55 million property in under 3 years. And then I went to corporate America. I was at the same company for 14 years. I went from vice president of sales to executive vice president to chief revenue officer. And during that time, I led the company through billing $100 million a year to over $200 million a year. In 2017, I was named one of the most influential women in radio. And that same year, July 27th, when the CEO I had reported to for more than a decade became ill, he elevated his daughter to CEO and she fired me. And that's when I went out on my own and became an entrepreneur.
Oh my gosh. It's just so impressive what you were able to do with sales in the corporate world and the radio. And I'm just wondering, I mean, like, where did you find this corporate like confidence? I know you're like a master at like creating confidence in yourself and other people, but when I think of the corporate world, I'm an educator, and I'm not going to say that it's not like dog eat dog sometimes, but we all know that the corporate world certainly is dog eat dog many times. But somehow, like, you just had this corporate confidence, and you never let anybody shake your tree. I mean, like, did you have some kind of strategy? Was it just there? I mean, where did this confidence come from?
Well, I grew up poor, and I knew that I never wanted to be poor. So to me, I was always trying to outwork everybody else so that I could get ahead and earn a lot of income. And that drive really was a trajectory for me that took me from salesperson to the top of, the C-suite. So it was just about drive, ambition, asking for opportunities, and giving people reason to promote me and believe in me, making sure I deliver on commitments.
Something you just said really hit home with me. And when you're talking about like there's something you didn't want, and it was almost like you were like running with fear, like as fast as you can, like in the opposite direction. And I found myself had to doing that a lot. So when people tell me, "Oh yeah, I grew up poor, I grew up in a dysfunctional home," or poor me, woo woo woo, and I'm like, hold on a second, time out. I'm saying you can use that for like energy to like run toward what you want. Run away from what you don't want, run toward what you want. But I don't think like enough people see that, Heather. What do you think?
It's funny you say that. I had Gary Vee on my podcast last month, and he was saying that he's much more concerned about wealthy, privileged children and their lack of ambition and drive. When you grow up without, you do have this inner fortitude and strength, having overcome adversity at a young age. It really sets you up to be able to take on so much more as you grow and advance.
No doubt. I listened to that podcast show, Gary, and it was a really good. I enjoyed it. And it reminded me of a couple classes that I taught. I'm an inner city school, high school teacher at the largest inner city high school in Connecticut, New England, right? So, and I've told my students many times, I said, listen, the influential, affluential towns that are nearby, I said, those kids may look like they're ahead of you. I said, but what you don't realize is that when you get out in the real world, let's say your first jobs or whatever, when mommy and daddy are no longer watching over, right? And I said, and you get knocked down and you get kicked when you're down and you get kicked in the teeth. I go, believe it or not, you inner city kids that have had to overcome hard times your entire life are going to have an advantage. And they're like, well, they're like, what are you talking about? And I say, well, here it is. In the affluential neighborhoods, mom and dad are like there a lot for their kids, looking out for them, picking them up, helping them out. What happens when they get in their first job and mom and dad aren't at work looking out for them and they get knocked down? Are they going to know how to pick themselves up? Especially when they're down and they get kicked. Are they going to know how to pick themselves up? And the thing is, probably not. The answer is probably no. And I'm like, and you kids, you inner city kids that have had to overcome hardship your entire life, you have an advantage and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. So now bringing me back, I'm also the Connecticut president of the Association of Publishers for Special Sales. It's a bigger international publishers association. And I remember when I got appointed to president, the outgoing president said to the whole group, she said, "This is Dan Blanchard. He's fearless." And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. I go, it's not that I'm fearless. I'm scared all the time. I can admit, I get afraid of like everything. But to be honest with you, I think I'm like afraid of like standing still. I'm afraid of not doing something, that the world's going to come like eat me up if I don't go do something. So I think I'm afraid of that. And then somebody in the crowd yells out, "That's fearlessness." I'm saying? So, I mean, is that, do you kind of see that too? Like kind of like to stand still, or is that
Yeah,
big confidence?
fear is definitely part of growth, and fear can be something that stops people. But I've really learned myself to see fear as a green light and something that I want to jump into and run through even faster, because every time I've done that in my life, I've been able to get to the next level, cross that next chasm and really find an opportunity bigger than I even knew existed.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, when I talk about this with my athletes and my son, I always say, face the fear, because this is an awesome opportunity to build your courage muscle. And you don't ever get to build your courage muscle if you don't face your fear. And you have lots of opportunities out there to face your fear. So it's sort of what you're saying, Heather, I think about the green light. But I want to fast forward to like when you got unfairly, fired from your corporate job. You're like top of the world. You're doing awesome. You're making the company tons of money. And then something that's out of your control happens. You know what I'm saying? The daughter gets elevated. The daughter says, "Heather, pack up. You're out of here." I mean, how did that crush you? How did that not crush you? How did you overcome that? How did you bring your confidence to that game?
Yeah, that was a really low moment for me. I had associated a lot of my confidence with my title at the company, my income, and that security of that comfort zone I had been in for 14 years.
Mm.
So it was a real low moment for me. I did something really smart though. I had launched a personal brand a year before I got fired. So I had a significant following on social media, and I recommend everyone to do this. Really get strategic about your personal brand, pay attention to what you're putting on social media, grow your audience. Because when I got fired, I was able to post about getting fired and ask for help. And I had thousands of offers and opportunities literally 2 days after I got fired that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't invested in myself a year earlier.
Well, that is really cool advice. Very, very smart advice. And I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Robert Kiyosaki, of the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, how he always said, don't quit your job, build your side business. You know what I'm saying? And when you build that side business, you have like a safety net. You can walk into your boss's office and say, I want a raise. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be scared because you got like that safety net on the side. And it kind of reminds me of like the side gig you're talking about of building your personal brand on social media. Always have something going on the side. And I'm always talking to my students, Heather. I'm always saying, listen, work your like your 9-to-5 job, or maybe these days it's 8 to 5 or 7 to 5. Work those jobs, but on the side, you need to be doing something. Social media, find a passion, find a hobby, and start building that, which is kind of like the brand I think you're talking about, Heather. Start building that, building your network, getting people to know you, know what your passion is, know what you're good at, whether it's a product or a service or whatever it is, because you got that. I'm always saying that. So it looks like me and you were thinking alike on this, what I'm saying, which is awesome. And I'm teaching our youth, difficult, troubled youth many times, but they need it even more, what I'm saying? Because they may not keep a job, what I'm saying? So they need it even more. So now I'm just wondering, when you went through this moment in life, this extreme difficulty in life, is this where the whole concept of confidence finally came to the surface? I mean, you've displayed it seems like all your life, but was it really right there, cognizant and able to like verbalize it, and you actually knew that this is what you wanted to talk about?
No, I didn't know until I'd been fired, and then I went on the Elvis Duran show, and halfway through the show, he said to me, well, Heather, obviously you're writing a book. And I wasn't writing a book then, but I said, oh yeah, I'm writing a book. And in that moment, I let him hold me accountable to his 10 million, listeners. And I jumped on that plane and I Googled, how do you write a book? And it just says start writing. So that's what I did. I got home and I just wrote every single day. And pretty soon, within the first month, I knew I was writing about my story of my low moments and how I learned to create confidence from them, and how I was recreating confidence in myself yet again. And that's when I had the idea, was after being fired.
So from bad things come good things, I guess, right? That's what the whole thing on the surface for you.
And here's the thing, if you're getting fired, somebody doesn't want you there. And, if you have self-worth and self-value, you want to be around people that want you to be there, that want to elevate you, support you, and encourage you. And that wasn't the case. So for me, getting fired was a tough punch in the gut. However, it was much better than staying and working with someone that was always threatened by me, trying to stab me in the back. And I'm so grateful for it now.
Yeah. And it sounds to me, Heather, like you did what I tell all my students, and what I tell people all the time is say yes. Say yes and get moving. I remember one time I was doing this newspaper interview with the owner of the newspaper. It was a 20-minute interview and it lasted like an hour, and the guy starts smiling bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And then at the very end, about an hour 10 in, he closes his book and he says, Dan, we're not doing this interview. And I'm like, whoa, like what just happened, And he goes, because I want you to write a weekly column. And I was like, dang, my heart started pounding. And I was like, okay, keep calm, keep calm. And I looked at him, I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And I'm driving home, white knuckling on my steering wheel going, how the heck am I going to do that? I'm saying, I don't know how to write a column, but same sort of thing, right? You Google it, you ask around, and then you just start writing. You just start doing something. So for me, I have found just start doing something helps with my confidence and my courage. And I think you're saying kind of the same thing, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Taking action for me always solves problems. It builds momentum and it creates opportunity and opens doors that previously weren't open, but none of it happens until you take that first step.
So how do you tell people who are reluctant to take that first step? How do you get them to like trust and believe That listen, I, Heather Monahan, did it. Millions of people like me, Dan Blanchard, just move and you'll see things start happening. I mean, how do you convince someone or get someone to trust you enough to take that first step?
So I believe that confidence is a 3-step process. It's
Mhm.
beliefs, actions, and knowledge. And if you're not ready to take action yet, you can turn to the beliefs or you can turn to knowledge, either one. If you go to knowledge,
Mm.
there's my podcast out there. There's so many books out there. There's my book
Yeah.
out there. There's so many shows. There's so much information readily available that you can access to build your knowledge base so that you understand what is available to you and how you can do it. But on the belief side, if you're more interested in your beliefs, start writing down how you want to feel about yourself. I am powerful. I am confident. I am enough. Write down these mantras and then read them 7 times a day with frequency and really
Mhm.
begin to feel, even if you don't feel that you are enough yet, the more you do this, the more you're playing that ad in your own mind, you're going to start believing it. It's just a fact of life. So really step into that. The beliefs and knowledge are 2 things that anyone can do for themselves in their own privacy. No one else has to be aware of it.
Yep.
That risk is on you and you alone, but it's really about investing in you and making the time for you. And so if you just want to take those 2 steps first in your own privacy, you don't have to tell anyone yet. Then that next step, I have an free accountability partner on my website. You can sign up for it. It's 30 days of getting emails from me on suggested actions that you can take to hold yourself accountable, to create confidence in every moment, and really start, take that next step. Let somebody know. You can let me know. Then you can let someone else know in your life. But the more you begin to put it out there, put it out to the universe, to your friends, to your encouragers, the more they're going to start championing you, cheering you on, the more momentum
Mhm.
you're going to build, the more you're going to start listening
Yeah.
to your own voice. All of these small steps end up creating massive results over time.
I love that, creating a community, Heather, and that whole 3 strategies. If one doesn't work, go to the other. Now, I come from like the sports world and the academia world. So for me, I got like this double strategy, mental toughness, obviously, but if the mental toughness is not working, if you can't get your brain to make your body move, I've always said, well, then start jumping around like an athlete, like a prize fighter. Start jumping around and getting your body to move, and then that will get your brain to move, believe it or not. So if one's not working, try the other. So I completely love that and understand what you're saying. But if one strategy is not working that day or at that moment, jump to the next strategy to kickstart the others. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? It makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then bringing in the community and creating that accountability, powerful, extremely powerful, Heather. That's great, great advice. Now, could you give us just like a quick little journey on, I guess, on your writing journey? So you start writing this book. You'd never written one before. You tell the world, yes, I'm writing a book. And how did that journey go for you?
Well, like I said, it was really getting fired that was the catalyst for me. Then just Googling it and figuring out how to write a book. Then I had to find an editor. I just went to LinkedIn and started, reaching out and sending DMs to
Were you
people.
scared during this process?
I was petrified because I was never the literary one. I was the
Yeah.
sales one. And
Mm-hmm.
I was really making a decision to smash through those limiting beliefs that others had put on me that I had accepted before, that I could only be good in one space, and decide to take my own unique attributes and just go be whatever I wanted. And it was petrifying at 43 years old. It was really scary. And, I had let that paycheck become handcuffs to me. And that idea that, can I find a level of success, financial success, to pay my bills, take care of my
Yeah.
child
Yeah.
in a completely new venue and new role. And it felt really risky, very scary. And still some days today, it's scary. Being an entrepreneur is very different than living in corporate
Yeah.
America. Corporate America is very linear. So I always knew the next job that I had ahead of me. I knew the next opportunity. I knew the obstacles. It's very clear. The life of an entrepreneur, I find to be much darker. You don't know what that next turn is, that next need,
Mm-hmm.
that next opportunity missed or gotten. And so, I take a lot of risks. I fail a lot as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. And then I have a lot of wins too. So it's sort of, the journeys are so incredibly different that I've been now on my own almost 2 years. I'm just now starting to get to a place where, okay, I'm ready to go to the next level. Okay, Heather, talk yourself into it again. You're going to get scared. Everything is going to come back to you that stopped you before, but here's why you need to move forward. You did it last time, you can do it again. And starting to really have this core fundamental belief that taking that step, even though you don't see that staircase in front of you, that's everything. When you have that faith, you have that relentless faith and belief in yourself, and that the universe is there and working with you. And as long as you're doing good and believe and just move forward, you'll see those steps start appearing. And it's pretty powerful stuff, like nothing I ever had in corporate America.
There's something very cool about being an entrepreneur. I'm like a educator / entrepreneur. So I know what you're saying. And I love how you just did like that whole metacognition out loud, you know, thinking about your thinking, but you actually saying it out loud, which is making it even more powerful. Like, you know, you're going to be scared. You've done this before. You've succeeded. This is just the next step. You know, there you are, like thinking about your thinking out loud, and metacognition is powerful. And I get that when you try something different, you get scared. But I've always believed that if you can create the habits of success in one area, then you can transfer those habits of success over to another area. Now, it may, what you do with the strategies and the tactics may look different. You know, they're probably going to look different. But the success habits of getting up early, getting there late, working hard, you know, those stay the same. So, like, I always tell people, like, I've been a teacher and a coach for years, you know, and I always tell people, I said, listen, if I can get a kid to perform on the football field, eventually I can get them to perform in the classroom. You know, maybe not today, but give me a chance to get this kid to perform on the football field, or give me a chance to get this kid to perform on the wrestling mat or the weight room. You know what I'm saying? And then once he has those habits of success and he has people believing in him and he's starting to believe in himself, and then I can say, hey, let's take the next step over to the classroom, right? Now that's going to look different, but the habits of success are still there. You know, now let's take this next step over to like a job, even if it's just pumping gas. You know what I'm saying? Let's take it there. And guess what? Hey, let's see if we could take this next step over to college. So people often put these labels on us, like, you know, you're just a salesperson. You know, you're not going to do good in the corporate world in certain functions, or you're just a corporate person. You're not going to do good in the entrepreneurial world. But I've always disagreed with that. I've always said that the success habits can be transferred. And the tactics, the strategies are going to look different. And it's a new learning curve, you know, sometimes a huge learning curve. I find myself always on that, Heather. And I know you are too, that you're in the entrepreneurial game. You know, you're always on it. But the success habits, you know, from you becoming so awesome in sales, so awesome in corporate, I think it made it possible for what you do in the entrepreneurial world. Because what a lot of people don't realize is the entrepreneurial world is hard. It's real hard, you know, and it's scary and it's tough. Whatnot. So
there's some things about being an entrepreneur that are really hard and really scary. However, there are other things that I find are much easier. If you're one of those employees or people that have great ideas and out of the box ideas and innovate, and you're working in a world where no one wants to take the risk on those ideas, you begin to feel down about no one appreciating or believing in your ideas the way that you do. That chips away at your confidence. I was in a situation like that. So even though things seemed great on the outside, I had a big paycheck, a big job, inside, I wasn't feeling great because we weren't pulling the trigger and executing on my innovative ideas. We weren't taking chances. Now, today, every day, I take a chance on my idea. Whatever idea I come up with, I run with and I go for it. And that creates confidence for me. So I'm living a life of true, authentic confidence now for the first time in my life. So that part is amazing and far outweighs, you know, what I gave up on the other side. However, like you said, you know, it's transitioning the skill set that worked for you over here, bringing that with you and applying it over here. Like you said, there's a learning curve. So you got to give yourself a little runway and a little time and go easy on yourself. But when I took my sales knowledge and leadership knowledge and strategy from business and applied it to being an entrepreneur, I figured out why a lot of people don't sell books. They don't know how to sell. They're great writers, but they don't. There's millions of amazing books out there no one's ever heard of because they don't know how to sell, or they don't know how to promote them and market themselves. When you take that expertise from corporate America and apply it as an author, suddenly you have a best-selling book. So it's really paid off that, in a weird way, it's paid off that I had this expertise, this practice in all 20 years of sales and marketing and leadership, because now that's what's made me successful over here. A lot of people want to be speakers. I had 20 plus years of speaking. I didn't get paid for it back then. But now I said, when I went to work for myself, oh, wow, there's a whole business model here. I need to pitch myself. I need to say, why me? I need to show the customer how I'm going to impact them. I need to bring value. I need to get reviews and recommendations. All these things I learned over in corporate America, I put to work for me now. And that's what's enabled my success.
I love that whole the crossing of the disciplines. I'm such a big fan of that. I've always done that, even in the classroom as an educator. I've always studied psychology, studied sports, studied sales, studied the business world, and brought it into my classroom to like help my students in the educational world. And some people have been like, what are you doing? But to me, it just made sense. You know what I'm saying? It just made sense. And it was very easy for me to go off and do the things like I did, become a speaker, because there I was speaking in front of my students every day, like you were speaking in front of the corporate world.
Right.
Every day. It was very, very easy. So, I'm always looking for those cross-discipline connections. And I feel other people too should be like looking for that. And I think if more people are aware of that, they'd probably just naturally build more of their confidence.
Absolutely.
And when I think back, Heather, if you don't mind me bringing you back a little bit, when you were talking about how you had some great ideas in the corporate world and they weren't always jumping on it and that was chipping away at your confidence. So I'm thinking two things here. Like one, what's your advice for people that are stuck in that situation you were in the corporate world? I get some of that in the educational world where I try to bring up stuff to my bosses and they're like, no, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, what do you mean? No. But you're right. It does chip away on your confidence. So one would be like, what do you tell people whose confidence are being chipped away? And two, I'm thinking back about what you said about that little side gig of building your personal brand and almost thinking like in the corporate world, in a way, you're kind of working for yourself when you're building your skills and your brand and all that other stuff. So, I mean, is that part of it of when they're chipping away at your confidence?
Yeah, I think whenever anyone realizes that they're not happy at work, they're not in a positive environment, they're not being appreciated or valued the way that they believe they should be, they're not being taken seriously, et cetera. When those things are happening, that's a red flag that says, hey, I need your attention here. You're in the wrong situation. You're in the wrong company. You're around villains. You need to fire the villains and, put yourself in a better position. So there's a number of different things you can do. You can launch a personal brand, right? You can start building value in yourself and investing in yourself, which is what I decided to do. You can update your resume and you can start looking for another job. You can start telling people in your social circle, hey, I'm looking to make a move. Who can you connect me with? There's so many different things that you can do to really separate yourself and create a new lane for you to go, a new opportunity for you to go in. But it's up to you to take that action and make a decision on which one is the one that you feel, or you could do them all, but what steps can I take today and now? Because there are always steps that you can take. The problem is when people do nothing and then they just complain, they become unhappy, they bring the unhappiness at home with them, it affects their family. Not doing anything is the epic fail. It's all about, let's try some different things here, let's take some steps and watch how opportunities start connecting and pushing you to where you're meant to go.
I couldn't agree more. So I'm thinking of the world that you jumped into and you're taken by storm as an author, speaker, podcaster. And myself, I'm more of an extrovert. I was like a speaker before I was an author. So for me, it's been kind of easy. But what I've discovered, and I've been president of multiple associations, organizations that involve like authors, publishers, and even involved in speakers. But from what I'm finding is, and there's obviously in the speaker world, there's more extroverts, but in the author world, they're more introverts, more shy. So like I look around at like the people that I work with and I'm like, it's easy. Come on, just do what I'm doing. It's easy, but it's not. I mean, they're really struggling. They're really shy. They're like, they're great writers, better than me. You know what I'm saying? Great writers, but I'm the successful author and yet they can be, and because they're better writers than me. Sure. I mean, what is your advice for like the introvert, shy people in the world that you're in, that I'm in? Do you have any advice for them to build their confidence? Because they're like, they like to hide behind the computer and hide behind their pen.
Sure. Here's the thing. We all have a superpower and many of us have multiple superpowers. If your superpower is being an extrovert and being on stage, You want to capitalize on that. You want to put yourself on stages all of the time and maximize that. If that isn't your superpower, if your superpower is your writing and being alone and isolated, you don't want to try to be someone you're not. Instead, hire teams of people around you to fill in those blanks. Hire a great PR team to tell the story for you. Hire people to support you and elevate you so you can write more books. Hire, a marketing group that's going to do a great job, marketing the message for you if you don't know how to do it. But don't try to be someone you're not, right? So my happiest time is not spent at home alone writing all day and all night. If I tried to do that, I'd be a miserable person. So instead, I try to find ways to have people support me in the things I'm not great at so that I can go out and do the things I'm great in. And the more we're all great at something, we all have a superpower. Figure out what that unique value proposition is that you have, that you bring to the world, and spend your time there. If you are born to paint, you're going to be miserable as a CPA, right? So stop listening to what everybody else is telling you and start living in the space that you were born to own.
Good advice, no doubt. Like that. So can you tell us a little bit about your books? So you started writing this book, and then give us a little story about your books. What happened?
Sure. So my first book, Confidence Creator, came out last May. It's a compilation of my lowest moments in my life and how I learned to create confidence. And I was petrified launching that book. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life. And I was lucky enough to find some people who had gone through similar circumstances. They coached me through, hey, this is normal. You're in good company. I felt the same way. I survived. And, realizing that I had let all these fears amass in my mind, they weren't real. And in fact, the book ended up trumping Trump for #1 in business biographies on Amazon the first week it came out. And those moments along the way for me, corporate America wasn't like that. I now have earth-shattering moments that I cry. I'm overwhelmed with emotion, happiness. It's mind-blowing. And I just realized I sat in an environment for over a decade where I wasn't growing. I've grown more in the last 2 years than I did in the last 2 decades. And I don't ever want that for anyone else. So if you aren't feeling afraid, if you aren't feeling valued, you've got to take steps now to make adjustments for yourself and find out where your path is meant to be. Because I wish so much that I had done that before. I just finished writing my second book, which is Confidence Creator, The Next Level. And now I'm deciding to go a different route and get an agent and finish my book proposal. And I'm continuously learning and evolving, and the whole process is scary, but it's becoming more normal, which is an amazing feeling, because the more normal it becomes, the more I'm able to go to that next level.
And that's what I love about the business that me and you are in. You know what I'm saying? You get to create yourself, and you get to create yourself, creating a better world, which I love. You know what I'm saying? I love that. And I'm not afraid to outwork people. I'm not afraid to be creative. And it's a really cool thing when you're working hard and you're creative and something really cool comes out of it. And you don't get that in the corporate world. I don't always get that in the educational world because I'm kind of stuck to the curriculum and all that sort of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Then trying to climb the ladder in the educational world. It's what I do and what we do is very, very different, and it's exhilarating. It really is. So you got this first book, Confidence Creator. I think everybody should pick it up. Everybody should read it. The second book that you're working on, The Next Level of the Confidence Creator. I think everybody, as soon as they can get their hands on that one, should pick it up, because I find that, I think confidence and courage, courage, much I talked to you about, it's one of the most important things we can have. I remember just last year, I was reading this article, and it was 10 famous people. You know what I'm saying? I forget who they were. It was Oprah Winfrey, big time, right? Every single one of them said somewhere in the article, if I had just acted courageous sooner, they said, if I could do it over, that's what I would do. I would act courageous sooner. So I'm thinking, yeah, that's something we can all do, right? We can, even if we're not courageous, we can act courageous and build our confidence, and of course, read your books and build our confidence. So just, and I know you've taken it to another level. You got this amazing podcast show, and I really like your down to earth. You kind of come in, you talk a little bit about the journey. You bring on a super guest. You talk. You and the guest go back and forth. You guys share some awesome insights, and then the tail end. I love how you just said you know what, this is what's happening to me. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm struggling. And I think yours is the only podcast that I've heard that does it like that way. And I think it's really cool. But I also know running a podcast is another scary thing to do. So how did you get the confidence to do that?
Well, my company right now, the only full-time employee is me. And then I have contract workers that help me on the side, but I haven't created enough opportunity yet to bring a team on. So for me, the challenge was, how do I have the bandwidth to take on one more thing if it's really just me driving this? So what I decided was I wanted to sign with a big podcasting company so I could have access to a team of experts to help me. And that's what I did. I went on a show, Dr. Drew and the Lady Gang, which are owned by Podcast One. And when the shows did really well, I reached out to the owner of Podcast One and said, I'm in Beverly Hills. I'd love to come in and thank you in person for the opportunities you've given me. And that meeting turned into a negotiation that began that spanned months, but we ended up inevitably deciding to work together. I signed with them. And what happened is, once I was with them, it was no longer just me, full-time working. Now I have a producer, I have a marketing and advertising person, I have a talent booker. So I have so many people that are experts in their field teaching me, helping me. And it's such a great feeling to surround yourself with really good people that are invested in your success. And it allows, like what you're saying, you explained the dynamic of the show and the layout. I didn't come up with that idea. Podcast One told me to do it that way. So they were able to educate me. I thought a podcast, you just interview somebody and it's over. And I didn't know that there's a better way to do it. There's a new, more innovative way. And I'm so grateful to them for teaching me. But it just goes to show, no one succeeds alone. And when you see people who are really successful in handling, so many different businesses and things, they're definitely getting supported somewhere along that way. And for me, it's about picking those right partners and picking those people that are going to stretch you to grow and teach you along the way. And luckily, they've been a great partner to me and definitely have made the show a real hit.
So creating a community obviously builds your confidence. Asking the experts and then creating a community of the experts obviously builds your confidence. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And one of my jobs is I'm a history teacher also. So I think about Teddy Roosevelt. That's one of the things he did, was he said, let's just ask the experts. Let's bring the experts in. And I totally agree. And if you can get the experts on your team and be part of your community, wow, what a confidence booster that is. So anyways, Heather, I know Mirna's going to be coming back on soon. Is there anything I should have asked you that our audience should know about you that I just kind of didn't get to yet?
I'm from Worcester, Mass, which I think is, I have to bring that up since you're in New England. And I now live in Miami, and I'm so lucky to be where I am now and gone through, even just the geographical changes of having grown up in the Northeast and now living in the South. It's, life is not about being stagnant. It's about, that evolution and journey, and it isn't what you think it's going to be. And that's okay, because I would have never, as a child living in Massachusetts, imagined that my life would be here now and that I'd have a show and that I'd be an author. I never thought that big. So wherever you are in your life, just think bigger, because there's so much potential out there for you if you're willing to just believe in your vision.
I so agree with you. I mean, you're so right on. And I got to tell you, I've been thinking about something a lot. When I was listening to one of your podcasts, you totally motivated me to do something. Now, you said that you've done like stand-up comedy.
I did a stand-up comedy course. I hated it. But yeah, a friend of mine told me he wanted me to do it because I felt stuck. And he said, the best way to get unstuck in life is to put yourself in an extremely uncomfortable situation. What do you think about doing stand-up comedy? And I said, ew, no way. And he said, okay, that's what you need to do. And it worked.
I've been thinking about that for like a year. And when I was listening to your podcast, I was like, oh, that was it. That was the arm twister. And I'm like, okay. I'm going to start looking down that road and start moving down that road of bringing more humor in my life and doing more scary things in the funny world. You know what I'm saying? And if I can do that in the funny world, I mean, it's going to definitely make me a better keynote speaker.
Oh, there's no doubt. You learn so much about on the fly when you have to stand up in front of an audience where you're expected to be funny and be different and unique. And they have so many great exercises that as a group, when you're in the class, that you learn. There's a lot of strategies and techniques that will help you, empower you to be a better speaker, to be more present, to be more creative. And I'm really grateful that I did take that class, even though I really didn't want to.
And eventually a better Mindalia TV host.
There you go. We all get better. We just keep growing.
So that's my goal over the next year is I want to start learning a lot more about that and becoming better at that. And thus it will cross discipline. Like we were talking about before, it will cross discipline into other areas of my life. Who knows? Maybe I'll make some new friends. That'd be cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I see Myrna's coming back. How are you, Myrna?
Yes, I'm here enjoying your conversation, guys. Thank you. What I have heard, and I completely agree, is that to be actually a comedian, it requires a deeper level of intelligence and soul search. Not everybody can just be funny, or at least make other people laugh. Thank you for allowing the Mindalia TV community be a channel for your ideas. And thank you for giving us your time, to our audience as well. Thank you. But before we leave, we want to ask you, Heather, where can our audience find you?
So you can find me at heathermonahan.com. You can find me on all social media platforms at Heather Monahan. And you can find my book, Confidence Creator, on Amazon, Audible, and my show, Creating Confidence with Heather Monahan, is everywhere podcasts are heard.
Thank you. And Mr. B, where can our audience find you?
Wonderful. Thank you, Myrna. They can find me at granddaddysecrets.com or danblanchard.net. Or just Google Dan Blanchard. You'll see me everywhere, all over the social media channels, pretty much all of them. And definitely check me out on Amazon. Dan Blanchard, you'll find a bunch of leadership books. Daniel Blanchard, you'll find a bunch of academic books.
Thank you again. It's been our privilege to have you here today. To our audience, we're sending a very, very big hug. And until next time, bye-bye.